Using shadow work to get over a bad breakup or divorce on today's Oblyron Spirituality. Greetings everyone, I am Oblyron. Thank you for joining me on today's episode of Self-Empowerment, where we are going to learn about how to use the powers of the shadow to be able to get over a bad breakup, a divorce, and to be able to move on to live our highest and best lives. Now, today's episode is not about pointing fingers or casting blame. It's not about cursing or any of that kind of stuff. It's really an episode about being able to talk to our guides and to use the powers of spirit to be able to move on, to be able to live our highest and best lives, and to also hopefully see the breakup or divorce from all perspectives as well. So the first thing to really get down, regardless of whatever the situation is to make the energetic break. And even if, let's say, someone is hoping to go back into the relationship or whatnot, it's still important to make the energetic break. Chances are, if you're going through a divorce or breakup, that there were a lot of boundaries that were crossed, or maybe the boundaries became non-existent. Whatever it was, having that break allows us to be able to reestablish our boundaries. It allows us to be able to rediscover who we are as individuals and to be able to separate us from that particular relationship. Now there are many ways to do it, depending on what your belief systems are. Some people actually have a cord cutting ceremony where they tie a ribbon between two candles and pretty much light them and watch the ties separate. Some people go to their spirit guides, and depending on what faction your spirit guides belong to will help us to be able to guide us from there. If you want to really cut ties, the best guides, in my opinion, are the guides of the shadow. The underworld and the shadow is pretty much the best place either for soul contracts or for breaking ties or to destroy things. And again, this isn't about going into offensive magics or spell work or anything like that. It's really about reestablishing boundaries. It's really about reestablishing our own identity. And many times, a lot of reestablishing those things involve our own shadow work too. So the guides of the shadow essentially reveal our unconscious minds. Many times we could do work on the conscious level. I experienced this myself. About 8 months into my separation, I thought I was doing great. I was talking to women. I thought I was moving on. I was starting to really enjoy my life again, really starting to enjoy my solitude and being alone again, and really rediscovering who I was. And I found that almost out of nowhere, I began to become flooded with all these images and memories of my marriage, when it was good, actually. All those memories in the beginning where you say all the promises to yourself, where you're in that phase of love or infatuation or whatever you want to call it. And it was so debilitating. It was like I couldn't concentrate. I was asking myself, my God, like what's happening to me? Is this have I just been suppressing my feelings? And what I found out is that is pretty much the body's nervous system giving its last death row of a cry. It's the patterns of your old nervous system, the patterns of the old self. It is the patterns of the husband that I used to be, the patterns of being, committed to one woman in matrimony. And that was pretty much my unconscious mind starting to surface. My nervous system starting to surface, unconscious mind starting to surface. And it's important to note that what I was feeling was a natural reaction. It wasn't necessarily me. It wasn't necessarily the me of today. Because I actually had this happen to me pretty recently. I was waking up at like 3 a.m. with just all these crazy thoughts and everything. And again, like I said, it's just the nervous system, which is kind of like doing its last screams. And so it's interesting that I did the video on shadow work right before, because I was asking myself all the 5 W's at like 3 a.m. And if you want more information on the 5 W's, feel free to watch the previous video, the intro to shadow work. I'll have the link in the description. So pretty much I was asking the 5 W's, who, what, where, when, why, to myself at like 3 in the morning every time I would wake up and feel these thoughts. Every time all these good memories would come back, every time everything would kind of cast doubt into saying, oh my God, do you really want a divorce? Well, I mean, yeah, it's all these irrational sort of things which pop up. When you realize that it's just your nervous system, you realize, okay, well, this will pass. And sure enough, it did. I found that I was not waking up in the middle of the night anymore. I wasn't bombarded of thoughts. And every time when these thoughts came up, again, I would ask myself the who, what, where, whens, and whys. And I would be able to do that shadow work on myself, to be able to do that digging work on myself. And every time there would be a good memory popping up, okay, well, why is this memory coming to me? And then dig through. And again, it's the old identity. It's the old identity wanting to make its comeback. It's the nervous system saying that it doesn't want to let go. And one of the reasons why the nervous system is so slow to react is because the nervous system becomes comfortable with what it already knows. So, if you're involved with someone for an extended period of time in a very long-term relationship or marriage, your nervous system has basically woven this intricate web with that other person. So much of that person's responses and stimulation to your senses or your emotions is woven into that nervous system. It's your rewards response. And it's also about survival. And so even if, let's say, the relationship was difficult or bad, well, that doesn't matter, because if you've been in it for a while, it tells your nervous system that you survived that particular experience. And so even though, like I said, if it was a challenging experience, if it was even an abusive experience too, your body, in a sense, still craves it because it craves the familiarity. But again, just letting it pass, knowing what it is, recognizing it for what it is, and moving on from it. And again, when those specific nervous system memories come up, it's an excellent time to do shadow work, because you can dig and find out exactly why we have relied upon, let's say, that relationship, or why we have relied upon another person for validation. Okay, so some things that may happen as we are going through the process of separation is we will probably have a tendency to project on our ex. This is when we start to encounter a lot of those videos of, my ex is a narcissist, or, my ex is a dismissive avoidant. We may learn a lot about attachment styles. We may learn a lot about, different narcissistic perspectives and whatnot. And a lot of these videos, like, they can make anyone seem like a narcissist or a dismissive avoidant. If there's one thing that I found is that, and what a lot of psychologists also say, is that people actually oscillate a lot between different attachment styles. So between, secure, anxious, and avoidant, a lot of it is also very situational. And in terms of narcissism goes, well, the statistics are pretty much in agreement that, a lot of us have a lot of very narcissistic tendencies. In fact, I hear some statistics, as much as 3/4 of the population has some form of either mild to even almost extreme form of narcissism. And, I think the statistics are kind of hard to get a good grip on, but some people actually think that there's actually a lot more people who could be walking around with, narcissistic personality disorder. But, the reality is, the more we start to discover these attachment styles and these narcissistic personalities or whatever, the more we start to project on our ex to kind of learn, well, who was my ex, who was I married to, or whatever, the more we start to learn too, if we're being very honest with ourselves, that, there were times when, maybe we had the narcissistic personality, maybe we had the avoidant attachment or the anxious attachment or whatever. And that's when you start to realize, okay, well, it takes two to tango, and that's when the projection begins to die off and we start to go inward. And during this time, usually a lot of the videos with the Jungian psychology really helps out, understanding how people are a mirror to us. And then that's when we learn, well, that person was in my life because there were things in my own psyche that I had not dealt with, and this person basically held up those qualities which I was looking for, or which I thought lacked in myself. That's a very sobering revelation when you start to really feel that. We move away from the projection. We move away from, this person wronged me, or, this person betrayed me, and it goes more to an inward type of feeling. Why did I do this? Why did I seek external validation? Why did I, sometimes you can even say, well, why did I allow myself to be mistreated? Why did I allow, the boundaries to erode away? And yeah, projection to reflection. And so, we may go through this for a while, and then after, when we can view these things without emotion, then, depending on what we want to do, we may choose to look at greater patterns of let's say marriage and relationships. What are the reasons why men would leave a marriage? What are the reasons why women would leave a marriage? And instead of looking at every single thing that happened within our own relationship, it's a lot easier to see these broader patterns and to say, okay, well, here's the broader pattern of what most people go through, and then here's what happened in my marriage, and this is where the similarities were, this is where it diverged, and then it helps to give a little bit more perspective. But really, when at some point we look at our ex, we look at ourselves, we look at general patterns of marriage, and we realize, okay, well, I think some of the best advice that I've seen so far is really just about moving on. And it's easier said than done, especially in the beginning. If you just recently moved out and you're going through all those emotions and all those feelings and everything, it's hard to say that, it's hard to kind of look on the optimistic side, especially going through something like that. But really, that is the best thing to do, because, well, it's really the only thing to do, is just moving on and picking up the pieces for ourselves and learning to become the highest and best versions of ourselves. So for me, I'm coming out of a 16-year marriage. I've been separated for about 8 months now. And I was actually kind of lucky in being able to move on relatively quick. I knew that for a while my marriage wasn't in good shape. So I wasn't completely blindsided or surprised or anything like that. I think the single biggest factor which allowed me to move on relatively quickly was spirit. It was having Hecate in my life. And I think that, that was the single biggest factor. There's just something in the spirit which helped to uplift me in what I was going through. Had she not been there, I would probably say it would have taken a little bit longer, and not having those spirit guides there. It's also important to really begin to establish different types of physical routines too, to be able to reset our nervous systems. We want to be able to move the risk reward system away from our exes to back to ourselves. And one of those ways is really, again, practicing those physical exercises. One way is box breathing, or what I would also call elemental breathing. So it's a 4 count where we inhale for 4 counts, hold it for 4 counts, exhale for 4 counts, and hold that for 4 counts. Or, for the spiritual version, we could say earth, air, fire, water, earth, air, fire, water, and use those in place of the 4 counts. And we're thinking of the elements as we're doing our box breathing. So that regulated breathing helps to reset our nervous system. And we don't need to do it too much. Some people recommend, upwards of I think it's a minute or 2 at most. What I've been doing is I've been combining box breathing with a lot of walking. I like to walk a lot. It gives a lot of that also helps to reset the nervous system as well. And again, walking with purpose, walking with posture, box breathing, and just sort of retraining the body, retraining the cells in the body to feel better about themselves. Again, we're not relying on an external factor to be able to make us feel complete or whole. Okay, another thing to do would be to rediscover ourselves. What fascinates us? What hobbies are we into? What passions do we have? A lot of times when we're in a long-term relationship, or we're married, we don't realize how much over time our priorities have shifted away from us. Our priorities, they shift to the relationship, they shift to the things that we got to do to making this whole marriage system work. And a lot of times it's very easy for a lot of people to lose themselves in that. Life becomes about the laundry routines. It becomes about the groceries. It becomes about all these things. And of course, that's the paradox where a lot of the attraction in the relationship also diminishes. It's like, we take care of so much of these practical things that, you start to see that person as a roommate. It's very hard to sometimes see them as a romantic partner. And again, this is common in a lot of relationships. So again, we want to attempt to rediscover ourselves. It may be even switching up the music we listen to. A lot of times we may have those special songs or those special bands and artists that we've listened to with other people, so that song might remind them of us. Well, maybe it's time to look for some new bands. Maybe it's time to look to different movies and again, reestablish our own culture, reestablish our own identity, and reestablish those things which makes us tick as individuals. And it's really in creating our best lives also that we begin to attract others into our lives. So if there's one thing that I've noticed getting divorced in my 40s is that there are a lot of people in the world, okay? I mean, just because you may be getting divorced from one person, it doesn't mean that there's not going to be someone else who will be entering into your life. And if there's one thing that I've learned being single again is that, again, there is no shortage of women. There is no shortage of people who will be attracted to you, of people who will, who look at you like you're awesome. When you're in a marriage and you're so used to interacting with one person and that's sort of the basis of your reality, you kind of have a tendency to stop seeing everyone else around you because you're so focused on the marriage. But not being in the marriage again, well, guess what? All that time and attention devoted to one person isn't there anymore. And so your energy spreads out. You start, you start to expand. And again, people pick that up. Again, there's no shortage. There's a big dating pool. And, once you start to get out there, things get better. In fact, I have actually been enjoying talking to women again. Maybe that's my Venus and Gemini in the 11th house, so maybe I lucked out with that. But no, it's been great talking again. It's been great to just go out and to just, let's say, have no agendas, have, to just be yourself, to be by yourself, and to be around other people. Like I said, so many times we're so wrapped up in our relationships. And again, when that person isn't there, everything opens up. Now, I'm not saying it's better or worse. I'm just saying that if you happen to be going through these difficult times, that things will get better. Another thing is that when you're going through this breakup or divorce, you don't realize how much you have grown throughout the course of that relationship. We may feel like a breakup or a divorce is it's null and void, it was a waste of time, but it really wasn't. You grow so much as a person. And when you're back on the market, when you're back being single, the people that you attract into your life are better in alignment with who you are now as opposed to who you used to be. And that's the thing about long-term relationships and marriages, is that you have the choice to either grow together over time, or you have the choice to grow apart over time. So again, the choice is always up to us. And let's say even if one person wanted to grow together and the other person wanted to grow apart, well, it doesn't matter, because it's not hard to find another person in your life. So I'm going to leave it there for today. I hope it helps, and if you've resonated with today's message, feel free to leave a like, subscribe, or a comment, and let us know how you've resonated with today's message. Also, I am available for energy work and services on my Discord, if you would like to talk more about this. Now, I'm not a marriage counselor. I can't give marriage advice, but what I can do is I can help with some of the digging work. I can help with asking the who, what, where's, whens, and whys to hopefully get to the root causes of perhaps some of your feelings. So again, thank you all again for watching. I really appreciate all of you, and love and light and wisdom and shadow. And now we shall close with a chant of Oblyron. Aumde sote, aumde Oblyron, aumde sote, aumde Oblyron.